Hi, I'm Kirsty Miles, a member of the BalletBoyz team, and this is a podcast series about Still Pointless, our 25th anniversary show. I'll be talking to the choreographers, artistic directors, and dancers behind the production. Okay, we are in the week before the show starts at Sadler's Wells. I'm speaking to Iván Pérez, who's the choreographer of Young Men, an excerpt of which is going to be in Still Pointless. Iván, can you tell me about Young Men? What is it?
Yeah, Young Men. Well, a very moving piece was created in 2015. It was the 100th anniversary of the First World War. And yeah, we were completely taken by these memories, and we wanted to focus on the bonds created between the soldiers back then, their traumas, what did they suffer from, what were their longings. And yeah, this was the inspiration for this piece that turned out to be a long story for BalletBoyz and for me as a choreographer.
Yeah, how did it come about? Was it an idea that you had first, or did Michael and Billy commission it? How did it work?
I started working on hazards, and it was man-made hazards like war or tsunamis and natural disasters. And this was just the research back in 2013. And then, of course, having the BalletBoyz being a group of young men at a very specific age really brought us to this concept. And then we wanted to make sure that it was not showcasing their power and strength, but also questioning gender in a sense that can we talk about emotion? Can we talk about vulnerability? And yeah, maybe those stories that are less obvious when we think of soldiers.
Yeah, and I saw in an interview that you mentioned that you were thinking about, like, as you said, like the natural disasters, kind of like external forces on someone's life. Can you talk to me a bit more about that influence?
Yeah, it's somehow there are things we can control and things that are out of our control, right? And the only thing we have is the way we respond to these events. And so when we talk about trauma, we talk about resilience. How do we recover from something so difficult? And how do we talk about it? I think also the arts can be a great mirror to these events, but also on an emotional level, they can help us in a way heal or process.
Yeah. And as you said, it's quite an emotional work and an emotional extract in this show as well. Is emotional impact like a focus for you as a choreographer? Is it something that you try and achieve a lot?
Definitely. I'm working for many years on the relationship between physicality and emotion. And I'm trying to also understand the performers also as people. So thinking of their lives, of their history, but also the audience. I want the audience to empathize with the performers. So they are dancers, but they're also sometimes acting or expressing. And we're trying to build a connection with the audience that is somewhat visceral and real. So it's a sensitive work, and sometimes we hit the mark, sometimes not. But yeah, for me it's important, and yeah, in a way you need the right context for that. I think the BalletBoyz, Michael and Billy, they brought Keaton Henson for Young Men, and it was the perfect match to then go to that viscera.
Yeah, Keaton, yeah, he makes his own like solo music as well. He's so good at that like gut punch of emotion. Can you tell me about like how it was to work with him, how it all came about?
Yeah, it was amazing to have Keaton in the studio every day. We were like 4 weeks. Really, he was in the keyboard, coming up with melodies. He brought a colleague of his with the cello, and there were also electronics in there. So it was really a creative process in the studio. And then he took that home and developed it. But it was a back and forth, really understanding what are we talking about? What is the essence of the topic at hand?
Yeah, and you mentioned that like the humanity of the dancers and the specific dancers is also important to the piece. Can you tell me how it's been, because you've been working this week with this group of dancers, how it's been putting the piece on a new group?
Yeah, it's been interesting because last time we also had a very eclectic group, this time as well. And I like to work a little bit on the collective versus the individual. So how do we come together, still keeping our individuality alive? And this is a dialogue we have constantly with the dancers, also with Michael and Billy, and what is that artistic kind of nuance decisions you can make there. And this time was also Shell Shock, for example, is a very powerful solo that then is a duet, and this time they have to make it their own, and so I'm very impressed by what they have achieved with that role.
Yeah, it's a really striking moment, I think, in that show with like Benji's solo. It seems really challenging as well. It's like it requires so much like performance and acting and like almost like contortion. Can you tell me about like the challenges of that solo of this piece?
It's especially difficult because we are not necessarily imitating the physicalities of Shell Shock, but we're very close to the original. And so, how to do that in a sensitive way, in a compassionate way, without falling into potentially parody or commentary or just fake. And so, we talk a lot about the honesty, we talk a lot about the sensations, the imagination, and to try to be fair. And so, to do justice to the topic. And
Yeah. Has there been anything else that you've been kind of trying to communicate to Benji or the whole group this week working with them?
for me, it's really helping them understand that there is depth in the choreography, that even is choreographed 10 years ago, even if it has a very defined form, what we're interested in also as an audience is their interpretation of that choreography. And as artists, what are their nuanced decisions they can make within that? And it's been quite inspiring to see them take on that responsibility.
Yeah. What is it that you like about choreographing dance?
Well, for me, time stops when I'm in the studio, but even before going into the studio, the moment I know a new project starts, my mind goes crazy with the topic, searching for inspirations, but also just responses. I just feel very alive. And yeah, I just fell in love with it when I was 11 years old, and I'm still trapped. I just love also working with people and coaching artists, and really seeing how can we develop the potential of the choreography, of the performance I'm working with.
Yeah. Does it usually happen that, because in this case you were kind of thinking like of a concept of natural disasters, of forces on our lives, of World War One. Does it start usually as a concept, or does it start in different ways sometimes?
It depends on the project, but more and more it starts early on with what I call a planting seed. First is what is it gonna be about? What am I interested in? And also what can be a catalyst for that research that eventually arcs along my works, which is this emotion and understanding kind of the more fundamental questions of life, and create a kind of self-reflective approach. And so searching for topics around that and trying to dig in further.
Yeah. And how does the devising of the actual movement happen from that like idea stage to actually knowing the moves and the steps? How does that work?
Right. There is a lot of practice already embedded in my body from years of dancing, and I developed my own practice in teaching as well. So I have my own approach to sensing my body, relating to the space, relating to other bodies. So there is already some base there, but I think there is a point when you're working with a topic that if you wait long enough, or if you approach yourself to it, the body kicks in and starts knowing what to do. And so I try to do that, not to force myself into making, but really sense how the topic resonates in my body.
I see. And then that's like you in a studio by yourself working out what it will look like before taking it to dancers. Is that right?
I mean, I do it with the dancers directly, and we do it through improvisations. So first we steer the mind. Choreography is in the mind for me, is what are we talking about? What are we thinking around this topic, and how can that potentially become physicalized? And so we're just triggering imagination, and then we start improvising, letting the body go where it wants to go in relation to that. And slowly some principles start emerging, so I try to catch them quickly. So what are the tendencies when we talk about this? How does the body respond to this topic naturally?
Yeah.
And then I guide the process of defining the choreographic principles and creating tasks that the dancers can keep researching. And then slowly those tasks become more and more narrow,
I
and
see.
the definition becomes clearer and clearer along the way.
Yeah. And so I guess in this case, like, that process of like deep research with the dancers is slightly short-circuited. Like, you don't have time to like go into weeks worth of like research about World War I with them. So it's been about like trying to succinctly communicate all of that. Has it been that?
I mean, this is the pressure of the society we live in. We don't have time, right? So how do you make time when you don't have it? And this is the magic of process and how to stay calm and take the time you need. And so always trying to get as much time as we can in the studio, of course. But process is process. You cannot speed it up. So if you need 2 days full on researching before you can make a decision, then spend it. Because then the snowball of the confidence, once you know what you're doing, you can make choreography in no time. You can make decisions very quick. So I like to take the time at first to know what I want to do and to have the dancers with me in that process. And then things evolve from there organically.
And you mentioned earlier, Young Men has had a long life in BalletBoyz. It was a stage show. It became a film as well. Can you tell me about how it was to translate this show into a film version?
I mean, this was mostly the idea of Michael and Billy, and once we were in the studio, even before it was a stage show, they already knew they could make it into a film. And so at some point it was the filmmaking and the show was a kind of parallel process. But what was interesting was the core of each scene, the core topic, whether it was drilling, whether it was training or shell shock or the nightmares they were going through, that became the focus. And then it was how, because in theater, many times it's more abstract in some way. The audience finish whatever you don't see, you finish it in your imagination. And so the exercise, I think, was to make it very realistic and let all the layers land in a way coherently as a drama film. And then it was interesting how this slow process brought the content, the choreographic compositions, the dramaturgy, added on location, costume, music, made this film be so layered and so complex and so successful.
So was there like lots of editing or bits that you added to the choreography to make it into a film then?
No, the choreography was pretty fair to the original. So the moment the choreographic section started, it was running through as the original, finishing as the original, and then the new transitions to a new location in the drama were happening in the film. And there were some more realistic actions created for the film only. But choreographically, a lot of the original was still there.
I see. And my final question for you is, can you tell me what has surprised you about the life of a choreographer, or anyone listening who wants to be one? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say trust your intuition. Don't second guess yourself, and don't try to be like anybody else. This is easily said than done. No, we live in a society where we are exposed to what others are doing all the time. And we cannot help but compare ourselves. And that's a trap. So what I have learned over the years is come back to me, come back to what I'm interested in, what moves me, and create from that place. And let that resonate as far as it needs to in the world. But trust your own core.
Nice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you as well.
A busy day for you.
But it's always interesting to, choreographers, we are not always asked the questions or given the time to talk. And I like when it's there to use it.
Still Pointless premieres at Sadler's Wells from the 12th to the 16th of May, followed by a UK tour from the 24th of May to the 11th of July. You can book tickets at balletboyz.com/book now. See you there.